Welcome to the Compass for Being Human, where we educate the ego, emotions, and philosophy for men. The phrase the male loneliness epidemic has become a familiar part of modern discourse. It's repeated across podcasts, headlines, and social media as if it explains something self-evident and unquestionable. The story usually goes like this. Men are isolated, abandoned by society, stripped of purpose, and left without meaningful connection in a world that no longer values them. And while male loneliness does exist in some form, the way it is currently framed is deeply misleading. It obscures more than it reveals, and in doing so, it redirects attention away from responsibility, accountability, and long-standing gendered inequalities. Loneliness is not the same thing as silence, boredom, or discomfort with stillness, yet these experiences are often collapsed into one emotional category. Many men are not lonely in the sense of lacking people in their lives. They are uncomfortable with the absence of stimulation. A life shaped around constant dopamine hits through gaming, pornography, scrolling, outrage content, or endless novelty makes quiet feel intolerable. When stimulation drops, unease rushes in, and that unease is quickly labeled loneliness. But discomfort with stillness is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of underdeveloped emotional regulation. Psychological research consistently shows that people who rely heavily on external stimulation struggle more with boredom, frustration, and self-directed purpose. Dopamine-driven reward systems prioritize short-term pleasure over long-term meaning, while serotonin-linked satisfaction comes from stability, contribution, and belonging. A person trained to chase dopamine will experience responsibility as dull, relational work as draining, and maintenance tasks as pointless. In that context, stillness doesn't feel peaceful. It feels threatening. But this is not a societal failure. It is a developmental one. This is where the loneliness narrative begins to function less as diagnosis and more as deflection. By framing men primarily as victims of isolation, the conversation recenters male emotional experience while sidelining ongoing inequalities that disproportionately affect women. The narrative quietly suggests that men's discomfort deserves urgent collective attention, while women's unpaid labor, emotional caretaking, and structural disadvantages remain background noise. It is not that men are not allowed to suffer. It is that male suffering is repeatedly elevated above the systems that continue to extract from others. One of the most overlooked contributors to this so-called loneliness is disengagement from domestic and relational responsibility. Many men report boredom and emptiness while simultaneously avoiding the work required to sustain a home, a family, or a shared life. Cooking, cleaning, planning, remembering, caring, these are not neutral tasks. They are connective labor. They create rhythm, belonging, and mutual dependence. When someone opts out of these responsibilities, they also opt out of the meaning that comes with them. What remains is not freedom, but emptiness. It is telling that boredom is so often reported by those who contribute the least to the maintenance of their own environment. And this boredom is not caused by a lack of things to do. It is caused by a refusal to engage in tasks that do not offer immediate gratification. A video game rewards instantly. Domestic labor rewards slowly, relationally, and often invisibly. Yet it is precisely this kind of slow contribution that builds connection. A person who avoids responsibility because it feels unrewarding will eventually experience their own life as hollow. There is also a striking contradiction in how physical labor is discussed. Men are often quick to justify avoiding household work by pointing to physically demanding jobs outside the home. And yet, men on average possess greater upper body strength and physical stamina. If physical capacity justified exemption, one would expect the opposite distribution of labor. Instead, we see women performing the bulk of domestic work, regardless of whether they also hold paid employment. Men dominate professional kitchens as head chefs, yet expect women to cook at home. Labor is respected when men perform it publicly and compensated financially. It is dismissed when women perform it privately and without pay. This contradiction reveals that the issue is not capacity, but valuation. Domestic labor is feminized and therefore devalued. When men disengage from it, they are not rejecting work. They are rejecting work that does not offer status. Over time, this disengagement erodes connection. A household where one person consumes and another maintains is not a shared life. It is a service arrangement, and service arrangements do not produce intimacy. Loneliness, in this sense, is not something that happens to men. It is something that emerges when participation is replaced by entitlement. Connection does not come from being entertained, admired, or accommodated. It comes from being needed and choosing to show up anyway. Responsibility creates belonging, not because it is pleasurable, but because it binds us to others in tangible ways. If we want to address male loneliness honestly, we must move beyond narratives that frame men as passive casualties of cultural change. We must talk about emotional maturity, tolerance for stillness, and the willingness to engage in unglamorous forms of care. We must stop treating responsibility as a punishment and start recognizing it as the foundation of meaning. A society that confuses constant stimulation with fulfillment will always produce people who feel empty when the noise stops. The solution is not more attention, more validation, or more distraction. It is participation, accountability, and a revaluation of the work that actually sustains human connection. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.